Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, The Software Chef. And today we are going to talk about setting up your first development environment. So guys, basically it doesn't matter what designation you are at. Maybe you are a software engineer, or maybe you are a DevOps engineer, or maybe you're working in support, or maybe you're a project manager or a program manager. Ideally, in today's IT world, which is very competitive, I believe we all should have our own development environment. And it's a very easy task to set up your own development environment and to just go through the code or set up something which you really want. So today, this video is all about setting up your first development environment, what all basic tools you would need, and how you can get started. So let's begin. Okay, so for me, my development environment is just three basic things. One is my terminal on which I could run some shell commands. So if you're a Mac user, you have a inbuilt installed terminal over there. If you're using Linux or RHEL on your laptops, you have a terminal installed by default on there. If you're a Windows user, you could install something like GitBash. I'll put the links in the description. So if anyone is just getting started, you guys could download this terminal from there. Second important thing is Git. Now, Git is a version control software in which you could manage the versions of your software, and everything then resides on a central repository, which could be reused again and via branches. So installing Git is pretty much easier. You could just download it from the Google and get started. And the third thing is your IDE, which is called as Integrated Development Environment. Now, most of the software developers, they could be using IntelliJ, they could be using Eclipse, they could be using, if you're a Python developer, you might be using PyCharm. I personally like VS Code as it has a lot of extensions which could be used, and you could code in Java, you could code in Python, you could code in YAML and whatnot. Now, for storing all this code, we'll be using GitLab in this particular example because again, that's my choice. You could be using GitHub or any other thing. And today we'll just demonstrate a simple example based out in Python using Git and we'll do coding in VS Code and we'll be pushing our code into GitLab. I'll show you these basic steps and we'll start looking at how easy it is to manage your own project. Now, this particular project can be your own hobby, it can be any open source contribution, or your own personal development or learning project. So let's begin. So now over here, what you see is I'm just at the homepage of gitlab.com. And what are we going to do over here is just simply create a new project. Let's create a blank project with, let's say, a name of GitLab Python hello world. Okay, let's keep this repository as public, and we are enabling a security test which comes by default in GitLab. So now I have created this particular project, and over here you would see by default in GitLab you have two files. One is the .gitlab-ci.yaml, which stands for your continuous integration. Continuous integration is in itself a huge topic, which I'm going to cover in my next video. This is not meant for now. And this is the default README file. So your README file describes how what all things is your project made up of, how you would want to build your code, how you would want to run your code. So this is a very important file for your project, and I strongly recommend that you create a nice README which is readable for all your users. Okay, so as we discussed, we have an IDE and a terminal which is required. So I would just clone it using HTTPS, and this is how my VS Code looks like. I would just fit it to my window. Just give me a second, and I hope this is visible to you all. Okay. Just a second. I would just open a folder over here. Or maybe let's do one thing. I'm in a projects. I would just go and clone this. Perfect. So in my projects directory, I have a GitLab Python hello file, and in this VS Code, I automatically get an inbuilt terminal which you see over here. So I could use either this terminal or the another terminal which comes by default on my local. Like for example, if I'm using my MacBook, I have my terminal which is built in over here. So I could use any of these terminals, either the terminal which comes by default in MacBook or in RHEL or GitBash in Windows, or an integrated terminal which comes within VS Code. So we are going to clone this project. Then we are gonna I would show you both the ways how you could do is do these changes to your files. Okay, so now what you're gonna do is you are just gonna open a folder, and let's say GitLab Python hello, which we just opened. Over here you would see the two files. The default readme, we would just delete it, and we would say welcome to our first Python hello world program, and setting up your own dev environment. We'll save this. We'll create another file which is called as hello.py, and we would just print a normal message which says welcome to my world of development. We will learn all the new tools, techniques. I think this is fine. Let's save this one. You would just run it, and you would see a beautiful output on your terminal, which is welcome to my world, and this is what we wanted. Now if you check the status, you would see we have modified two files. One is the readme.md file, another one is the hello.py. How you would take this particular code and push it to your remote repository which is lying on gitlab.com server. So that's an interesting part, and we're going to use this particular terminal. Let's try to make the changes from our terminal, and let's try to push it. Okay, I would just say vim hello.py. I would just copy paste this, and if I just do a status over here, okay, we have just modified one file. Let me modify readme.md also. Let's create it again. Welcome to our first development video, or setting up our first development environment video. Now if I do a git status, okay, I have two files. I would simply add them, create a commit message stating modifying readme and adding hello.py file, and I'll simply, if you go back to your GitLab terminal and if you just refresh the page, you would see all the changes. Now your readme is just what we wrote over here. You have a hello.py code. The interesting part comes over here. As soon as you made these changes, by default a pipeline is running in background, and this is running one of the basic security check in your code. So isn't that amazing? Now that's all for today, guys. That's it for this demo. Feel free to share what all development tools are you using in your day-to-day lives. And in our next video, which is going to be more interesting because we'll be talking more about continuous integration and how you could create a small pipeline for your code. So for this, I would say just go ahead and give it a try. Share your comments and let me know what interests you. Thanks for watching this video. If you like the video, feel free to share it with your friends, give it a thumbs like, and subscribe to my channel.